Alright, in this video I'm going to show you how to use the Bach Library in MSP to visualize, and listen to an overtone series. Great, let's get started. First thing you need to do, if you don't have it, is you need to go to bachproject.net to download the Bach Library. While you're there, you might as well download Cage and Dada as well. I haven't used Dada, but I have used Bach and Cage, and they're really excellent libraries. Once you've installed your library, we can get started, and I'll begin by creating an object called Bach.roll. This is one of the standard objects in Bach to visualize notes. So we'll use that as our starting point. First thing I'm going to do is change the clef, and I'll do that by going to the inspector, and over here I'll choose F instead of G. You might have to choose basic on your list, or you might have to actually search for clefs. So I can use F. I might also use GF if I want to, but I'll stick to F for now. Alright, now I'm going to also lock the patcher, press Command on a Mac, and let's see if I can hit a C. There's a C. I enter my note C. And what we need to do now is we need to be able to spit out this information so we can work with those numbers. So what we're interested in, there are several outlets. So there are various bits of information about this note that the object will give you. What we're interested in is what's called a MIDI cent value, which is essentially a MIDI value times 100. So to get that information, we will send this object a message called dump, and that'll work. So when I press dump, now all the outlets are gonna spit out information on this note. So the value we're gonna get is this right here. I have it selected, so up here it actually tells you what the MIDI cent value is, which is 3600. All right. So what is a MIDI cent? In case you don't know, in regular MIDI information, a C4 corresponds to the number 60. In MIDI cents, C4 actually corresponds to 6,000. And so in MIDI, C sharp 4 is 61, but in MIDI cent, C sharp 4 is 6100. C sharp 4, 6100. So what's the advantage? Well, the advantage is that between 60 and 61, you don't have any other numbers. But between 6,000 and 6,100, you have a lot of numbers. So what you could do is using MIDI cent information, you can specify various shades of C, if you will. 6010 would be a C that's a tenth of a half step higher than normal. So 6,050 would be a C quarter tone sharp, and so on and so forth. So this is standard in Bach, but also in Open Music, for example. Okay, excellent. So we're going to move on. I'm going to introduce an object called Bach.flat, which I will use to flatten the input to get rid of any parentheses that will be added automatically. And then from here, I'm going to add another object called Bach arithmetic series. It's short, it's kind of condensed here. Arithmeser. And then we're going to give it 3 arguments. One is the starting point, number 1. 20 is my arrival point, because I'm calculating up to the 20th partial, although I could certainly calculate to a higher partial or a lower one as well. I'm also going to put a bang object. Actually, sorry, before I do that, let me connect the bang object here. We have to do something very important, which is to convert the MIDI cent information to frequency value. So we'll use another Bach object called Bach.mc2f, and then we could use that to bang the arithmetic series object, and then we'll create another object called Bach.multiply, so we can multiply a fundamental times all these numbers. Okay, now here's a quick tip. If you wanted to make sure that everything is working properly, Normally in Macs you could do something like this. You could connect an object like this to a message to the right inlet of a message box, and then when you click on the bang you would be able to see your numbers. So here I would expect to see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 up to 20, but all I'm seeing is a list. That's because the Bach objects communicate with each other using lists rather than text. So what you can do to visualize this information is you can use a Bach object called Bach.print. And so when I connect it over here and I go to my Macs window, I'll see my, see I did that already. There we go, Bach.print. But another thing you could do is give it an attribute of @out t. And now I can just use it as a regular Macs object and see the content. Okay, so moving down the line, once we've calculated our frequency values, we're going to want to convert them back to MIDI sent information. So we'll use the opposite object of Bach MC2F, which is F2MC. Okay. The next thing we'll do is we will reformat this list so that it works for our purpose, and that will be a Bach wrap object. Bach wrap object is extremely helpful, and it's the opposite, if you will, of Bach.flat. So Bach.flat will remove any parentheses. Bach.wrap will add levels of parentheses. So this number here determines how many levels of parentheses you're adding. In this case, we only need 1. Excellent. So the last thing we need to do is create a new, well, almost the last thing, a new Bach.roll. Because now we started from a Bach roll. We took out the information, we converted it to frequency, we multiplied it, converted it back, and now we need to put it, reformat it so that we can input it into a roll. But it's not as simple as just putting it into the first inlet. We're going to have to actually give it a bit more information, because Bach.roll expects to know what the note is, how long it is, and where does it begin in relationship to the beginning. That value is otherwise known as the onset, and it sometimes seems confusing. So what I'll do is I'll use a standard value, and I'm just going to use one number, because what the object will do is it'll assume that all the other, so if I give it a list of 10 numbers and I only give it one duration, it'll assume that all of them use the same duration. So this makes life a lot easier. And then the same is true of the onset. So I'm going to say 0, 400. So my inlets are, this is my first inlet, then onsets, cents, and durations. Then I'm going to need a bang object, and I'm going to have 2 triggers, a list, and another trigger. Sorry, a trigger object, not a bang object. 2 bang, bang, list, and trigger. And bang. Okay, right. Alright. So there's my bang for my durations, bang list for my pitches, and then bang for my onsets, and then you absolutely have to bang the first inlet. Once you've input all the information into the object, you need to press bang, because that's what tells Bach.roll to build what you're asking it to build. So when I go here and press dump, I get my harmonic series. Now I'm not quite done. There are a few things I need to change. One is to go here and change my clef. This time I will use grand staff. The other thing I will do is I will change, you don't have to do this if you don't want to, but I like doing that, is go to search for durations, and then uncheck the box called show duration lines, because I don't like the way it looks. And the other thing I'm going to do is I'm going to change what's called the tone division, which will allow me to see quarter tone, well, or whatever type of division I want, but I'm going to use quarter tone division right now. Sorry, let me zoom out a little bit. Actually, let me zoom in here instead. Okay. So, the tone division by default is 2. Tone division, I'm going to give it a message. Tone division 4. So tone division is by default is 2, which means it's a tempered tuning. But this time, oh, I misspelled division. Tone division. There we go. So what it'll do is it'll give it a closer, it'll visualize it to the nearest quarter tone. Now you'll notice that the actual MIDI cents are actually not, or to remain much more precise. But the notation itself obviously is always going to be an approximation. So you can increase the level of approximation by the nearest eighth tone and so on, and you'll see some changes in there. But quarter tone will work for us for now. And I'm going to actually push this up a little bit so I can fit one more object down here. You might also want to hear it play back, right? So to do that, you need another Bach object called Bach.easy MIDI play, and we'll put that below the roll, and we'll connect the penultimate outlet of the roll to the first inlet of easy MIDI play. It's a little hard to see, sorry, but it's there. And what I'll do there too is I'll give it an argument of 4, which specifies again the tone division, this time of the playback. And I'm going to then give it a message called play, and what that'll do is, of course, play, and here it goes. Okay. One more time. Good. Of course, you can give it a message called stop if you want it to stop. I don't know why you would want to do that, but it sounds very cool. But of course, that works just like you might expect. Stop, play, stop. Okay, excellent. And so this now you can change this to any note you want, and then you'll just press dump, and it'll just change the series. All right. Hope you enjoy.